From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Ticats Today with RJ Broadhead.
It is Friday, September the 9th. Louie Butko enjoying a few days off. He will be back next week for Ticats Today. I'm the voice of the Ticats, RJ Broadhead. Great to have you with us for Ticats Today. Of course, the Tiger Cats on a 3-game losing streak. They're on a bye week, so they're hoping to figure things out for the final third of the season. Last 6 games. Their record is 3-9. They will play their next game on September 17th. That is a week from Saturday at home against Winnipeg. Has to be a packed house, fans. Ticats, over these 6 games, they're still in the mix in the East Division. Boy, wouldn't that be something if, despite all the struggles and the injuries, they're able to still get into the playoffs? It is possible. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. Of course, tonight, BC visits Montreal. Montreal just ahead of the Tiger Cats in the standings. They do have a game in hand Saturday. Toronto's in Ottawa. That's a big one, with Ottawa now tied with the Tiger Cats. They have a game in hand, as do the Argos, who are now 6 points ahead, but the Argos don't play a home game until October, so they've got to do a lot of winning on the road, which in the CFL seems doable for most teams except the Tiger Cats so far. So with their final half dozen games remaining, it's a good chance 2/3 through the season to talk about some statistics. And joining me today on Ticats Today is Jeff Girodat, my good friend, who's a high-end television sports producer in North America. We'll say North America, maybe even in Europe. But his roots. Jeff, your roots are in statistics. And when I talked to you about this last year, maybe a little over a year ago, you were super interested, and you obviously love statistics, and I certainly enjoy working with you. But it's got to be a passion for you doing stats.
It is. I've always loved doing stats. You know me. I'm a stats guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a trends guy. And the funny thing is, growing up, I was never a huge CFL fan. In elementary school or anything. I grew up in Niagara Falls. I never went to Ticat games, never went to Argonaut games, but my first job out of school was doing secondary stats on CFL broadcast for TSN. And as you know, once you get put on a project, all of a sudden it becomes part of you, and I've been with it ever since. So a bunch of great cups I've worked for the other networks, and it's certainly a lot of fun being back in the broadcast booth.
Well, you and I both love numbers and statistics and digging deep, more so than what you just see. I remember sitting at breakfast and go over numbers, and we'd call it 2-click stats is basically what most people collect, because you do a couple of clicks on your computer and it's pretty easy to find. But when you dig a little deeper into numbers, sometimes you waste your time, but sometimes you come up with some pretty good stories too. Yeah,
you do. The one that I always like is the one when whether I pass it to you or Luke or whoever I'm working with, and they go, wow, really? I didn't know that. And it's always trying to find that one that isn't in the game notes that 75 accredited media can get, but it's that one that, you dig a little deeper, and you know what, 6 times out of 10, you go, well, I've come to a dead end here. But those 4 times you're like, hey, I might have something here. And those are the ones that make it all worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, I remember turnovers haven't gone away as a story for the Tiger Cats this season, unfortunately. And you can pretty much point to turnovers as what has cost them with the record. But I remember early on, you and I think it was in a commercial break during a game broadcast, and we started talking about, feels like there's a lot of these turnovers happening late in games. And at that time, I feel like it was predominantly fourth quarter turnovers.
Yeah, I want to say it was of their first 15 turnovers, I think 13 were in the fourth quarter, and the only 2 that weren't might have been the opening 2 drives of the season, if I'm not correct. And that was just such a terrible trend at the time of, fumbles within their own 25 and missed opportunities and turnovers just at the very wrong time late in the fourth quarter that, as we sit here now in the second week of September, have led to 3 or 4 key losses and could have completely turned the season around.
Yeah, absolutely. I've stayed on top of the turnover statistics. Pretty shocking that played 12 games the Tiger Cats have, and just once have they not allowed points off of a turnover. They've had a turnover in every game, but it was the Montreal game that they lost by a point. So they didn't even win that game when they didn't allow any points off a turnover. But that is to me, it's pretty shocking. And if they don't fix that, they might not be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and also that goes to show you not only when they're turning the ball over, but where in field position they're turning the ball over. And maybe that's something we do for next week's broadcast, is take a look at where they had the ball when they're turning the ball over. Because in most cases, off the top of my head, they're not on the opponent's 23-yard line when they're turning it over, right? They're 40 yards away from their own goalpost, which has caused a huge problem. And, I look back at some numbers in history about the worst turnover ratio in one season that the CFL's kept since 1966.
Yeah.
There was a Montreal team in 1981 that was minus 36, and a Hamilton team, unfortunately, in 1995. Head coach was Don Southern back then. They were minus 36 as well. Well, the Ticats are at minus 23 right now. They're on pace for 34 or 35 below zero, and unfortunately, they're right there.
Yeah, and really, it points to the statistics. When I go through, I try to keep certain statistics for every game, and there's been so many times where I'm filling in the statistics for offense and defense, time of possession, and how'd the Tiger Cats lose this game?
Yeah.
And then you look, well, they allowed 14 points off turnovers, or 17 points off turnovers, or 20 points off turnovers. And we're not here to fix that problem, but I think one thing that you and I both know is numbers don't lie.
They don't lie. And I think I passed you a note on Labor Day Monday at the end of the game. That was their fourth turnover. And I started thinking, hold on a second here. I went back to the previous Toronto game. I'm like, this has been 10 in the last two games. And that's just, no matter how good of a football team you are, you're not going to win games by turning the ball over 10 times in two games against the same opponent.
Yeah, ideally 10 turnovers is like 12 weeks or 13 weeks.
Yeah, or not
two games.
Pretty good trip to the bakery.
And those turnovers have turned Jamal Peters into a star too, leading the league in interceptions.
Yeah, he's licking his chops saying, when do I get to play Hamilton again?
Yeah, well, if that does happen, it'll be the playoffs, right. And I think Tiger Cats fans would take that right
They'd
now.
be okay with that. They'd gladly take that for sure.
So sticking with the turnovers, just because it's been such a story, 41 on the season, and it's really interesting, again, where they've come. 8 turnovers in the first quarter, 13 points off turnovers total. In the second quarter, they've been really good. Ticats have only turned the ball over twice, have not allowed any points off those turnovers. 5 turnovers in the third quarter, 24 points allowed on the turnovers. I know it's a lot of numbers, but 26 of the 41 turnovers have come in the fourth quarter, resulting in 94 points against. And the other thing that stands out that doesn't really get talked about in statistics, 7 times, 7 of those 26 turnovers have allowed the other team to end the game. So the other team has been able to keep the football, either kneel or get a couple of first downs and not give the Tiger Cats another chance. And that's significant too.
Yeah, it is. And that's what we're talking about is when they're happening, right, in the most inopportune times. And I know Dane Evans has taken a lot of flack this year, but it's not just him with his 7 fumbles and 6 lost fumbles, right? It's everyone is part of the problem right now. And we always joke with Andy's keys to the game, right? Turnovers, win the turnover battle. And it's kind of becoming this running joke, but it's for them going into every game. It's the most important thing right now. And how do you, and I wonder, I'm not a professional athlete, far from it, but I wonder that mental battle of knowing, got to hold on to the ball here. It can't be anything worse for a quarterback to get behind center and say, I can't throw a pick here right now. It's like telling a caddy, telling a golfer, don't hit it over here, right? don't tell me that. Tell me where I can hit it, but don't tell me where I can't hit it, right? So
don't put it in the water. Yeah, you're guaranteed to go in the water.
You go in the water. So I just wonder with the mental battle of just saying, you know what, I can't turn the ball over here. We can't do this. We can't do that, and that's been happening. It's been tough to watch.
Yeah, it's been a recurring story. So the record is 3-9, 6 points for the Tiger Cats, 6 points back at Toronto, 2 points back at Montreal, tied for 3rd/4th place with the Red Blacks. I know in the standings, if you look, the Tiger Cats are in 4th because they've played an extra game, but we'll say it's a tie for 3rd right now. The road record is concerning too, Jeff. 0-6. So that has to change. I went back and looked, and the Tiger Cats have been winless on the road as recently as 2007. That was the last time. In 2012, they went 1-8, but in 2007 they were 0-9. And you look at a road record like that, and they've got 3 games remaining on the road. They've got to win some of those.
Yeah, and I know we talked about earlier this year, the last road win they had was December 5th, the East Final in Toronto, which obviously couldn't come at a better time. But to think you're slowly creeping up on a calendar year without having a road win. And, on the other side, you've only won 3 at home too. So that kind of tells you what kind of team you are. It's not like you're 6-1 at home either, right? So you've struggled no matter where you've played. But, I look at that game October 29th in Ottawa, those 2 games, the schedule maker does it again, right? Saying 2 teams are going to battle for that last playoff spot. I'm going to have them playing on the last couple of weeks of the season. If you're ever going to win a road game, that's going to be the one. So,
yeah. And there was a time not too long ago where looking at those last 2 games thinking, hey, Ottawa last 2 games, that could be a good thing. Well, that's changed.
Yeah, but I mean, you got an upcoming game after the Winnipeg game, at Montreal. Every game is massive in the CFL because there's only 9 teams obviously and 2 divisions. But the later you go, and those are the quote unquote 4-point games, right? They're just they're so big. So if you're ever going to win a road game, September and October would be the months to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're right with the game against Montreal and a couple against Ottawa, and again on the road. One of those is in Ottawa. That one in Montreal. That would help with the tie break. So yeah, it's so huge.
And they play on the road in Calgary too, and those are always tough because we did the game against BC earlier this year, and it's a 10:30 start. So the Calgary game is a 9:30 Eastern start. Luke's talked about it before in the broadcast booth. Those are never easy. You and I have traveled out west many times, and no matter how late you stay up the night before, you're still rolling over, and the clock says 5:15. Right? It's just your body and you're sitting around going, "I got 16 hours before I play a football game. What do I do with my time? My whole schedule is off as far as when I eat, whether a player naps, anything. When they get to the stadium, they're sitting in their hotel room watching TV. They're bored out of their mind. So that's, anytime you go with a 2-hour time difference, that's a tough football game to win.
It is. And I know with the Tiger Cats for that BC game during the week, a lot of the players went to Tim Hortons Field and practiced at night to try to get themselves accustomed to it. And that was one of those games that was there.
It was there.
17-12 loss, a 5-point loss. They've had a few of those. The other thing that's interesting, when you look at their 3 wins, they've all been by 7 points or less, and they trailed at some point in those games. So they still haven't led wire to wire this season.
It's weird that, and funny but not funny at the same time, that a team hasn't been able to put everything together all at once. Even no matter what sport you look at, you always have that game where you're like, oh, in hockey, we beat them 6-1. Or in football, what was the score? Oh, we beat them 35-17. And everything just came together, and you won all 3 facets of offensive, defensive, and special teams, right? And like you mentioned, all 3 wins they've eked out, and nothing's been comfortable all season long, that's for sure. Yeah.
And the quarterback situation, and you can go with the Tiger Cats, so many injuries, significant injuries. Braylon Addison, he's still the Tiger Cats' 3rd leading receiver, which is good for Braylon that he's put up some big numbers, but it would be nice he's been out for a few games now, to see one of the other receivers emerge. Of course, Tim White's their top receiver, Stephen Dunbar, and then it drops down to Braylon Addison. But Chris Van Zyl on the offensive line, Simone Lawrence, one of the leaders on defense, and then 2 quarterbacks. Dane Evans, he's been battling an injury for the majority of the season. Matt Schultz now on the 6-game injured list, when he looked like he was emerging with a lot of confidence and maybe had a chance to take over that starting role. Then we saw Jamie Newman and Jalen Morton in the last game. So the Tiger Cats have used 4 quarterbacks this season. Is that normal?
Well, funny you asked that. It's actually the first time the Ticats have used 4 QBs in a season since 2007. So we're looking at 15 years. Jason Moss, Casey Printers, Reggie Williams, and Timmy Chang. And Timmy Chang was a guy that he used to throw the ball lights out. He passed like Ty Detmer's NCAA Division I records for passing yards. He could really play it, but he only played in 2 games that year. But when I think of 4 quarterbacks playing, and obviously CFL is a QB-driven league, I wonder how difficult it is for everyone else on the offense to know that they've had to go through 4 quarterbacks. And I'm not just putting this on the quarterback, but every cadence is a little different as far as a handoff to the running back. Every cadence is a little different as far as, does a guy throw a flat ball? Does he throw a little bit of a higher ball? And, you haven't been with a guy all the time as far as receivers are concerned. You don't have that, communication or that instinct of, I know that he's going to cut here, or he knows that if the guy's on my inside that I can throw it to the outside and he's going to know that it's just going to be there when I turn around, right? I just think everything, by using 4 QBs, everything's just a little bit off, and it's shown.
It is a great point, and it's something that we as fans kind of overlook. You just expect the quarterback to go in and everything to work cohesively, and it doesn't. You're right. There's certain plays that some quarterbacks run fantastic and others just can't do it. So it does force plays to be changed. What I've really enjoyed about Matt Schultz is he was getting a chemistry with Tim White. You almost knew where he was going to go with the football and still was making it happen. And watching that chemistry, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch. And it's hard to find. You don't see a ton of it, but when you do have that connection, it's dangerous. You can really put up some big numbers, and Tim White did. The one game where I think it was 145 receiving yards.
Yeah, and I even think to Monday's opening, I don't think it was the opening drive, but opening quarter, there was that long pass that just went off the fingertips. And if Morton completes that pass, that was a good pass by him. It wasn't a bad pass at all. I'm not saying that changes the outcome of the game, but it changes the flow early on, and all of a sudden that spreads things out. I remember at one point during the game, I passed you a note that's saying the Ticats have had 8 completions, but 6 of them were under 10 yards.
Yes.
If I'm the Argonauts defense, I'm like, I'll give them 6-8 passing yards all day long, and I guarantee at some point they're going to make a couple incompletions, and we're going to spoil this drive. But just the long passes have not been there this year. The ones that have kind of stretched out the offense have not been that noticeable.
It concerns me that 2007 was the last time Tiger Cats used this many quarterbacks, because that was also the year they went winless on the road. So,
well, if they go 5, it'll be the first time since 1996. So then we're digging way back in the record book. So hopefully we don't get there and someone's able to step up over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. And with the bye week, maybe some of these injured players are able to get back healthy and producing. So again, the Tiger Cats don't play until a week from Saturday, and Winnipeg's already clinched a playoff spot. So they can maybe take their foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing I think about the quarterbacks too is that there's not that much practice time in the CFL, right? And even it's the one sport that you never practice at full speed, right? So even if you bring in a new quarterback, you're practicing everything, but you're not really hitting. You guys aren't going full speed and everything, and all of a sudden, then you get in there and you're under center, and the snap comes, and it's like, okay, here we go, right? And maybe that's why things have been off a little bit too, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, you got 12 guys chasing after you, and all they want to do is take the ball from you, take you down.
That hasn't happened since last Friday night, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let me just jump in here for a sec, Jeff. Ticats fans want to remind you it's time to ride on our strength. From now until October 13th, purchase 4 eligible Hercules passenger or light truck tires to receive a $100 Ticats rewards card and be entered to win our road trip sweepstakes. Available at participating Active Green and Ross Ontario locations, or visit HerculesTires.com/AGR rewards. How would you, as a producer, rank that sponsor read?
You've had a lot of sponsor reads this year, so if I had to rank them, they'd probably go 1 to 200. So, because every time I'm listening, it's a first down brought to you by somebody, it's a touchdown brought to you by somebody. There's certainly a lot of them.
Yeah, it is fun in the broadcast booth, and we've got the first down sponsorship, and a few times the offense has gone on a run, and we're all loving it up there. It's Luke's given me a second to get the sponsorship in before he analyzes the play, and you're letting me know the yardage of the play so that I know I can read the sponsorship. So it sounds, maybe like I'm smart, but there's a lot of help up there.
Team effort.
Yeah, exactly. It's and I guess that's one of the secrets is some of the statistics I come up with, some Luke comes up with, but the majority in-game statistics, Jeff Girodat, who is our guest on Ticats Today, who's our statistician, a sports television producer in Canada, one of the best in that position, and one of the best statisticians too. But you hand stuff over, and there's a trick to it too, because you're handing me something that you've handwritten, and you and I have worked together long enough that if I have comprehended it. But there is that moment, like when you're writing it, you have to be quick, but you still have to make it legible and understandable.
Which I don't always. I can usually tell when there's that secondary glance on, that C looks like an L or something.
Well, and again, like I want to be able to transfer the information to the listener. And so I always take that second, we give a thumbs up and it's good to go. And I try to weave it in, but it's, if I was giving you credit for all those stats, Jeff, it would be the Jeff Girodat show.
Oh, thanks. The other trick too about doing that too is, and as you know, is sometimes I've come up with something, and just because I've come up with it doesn't mean I hand it to you right away. I'm trying to wait for the opportune time. You've got so many different things. You've got, mid-20 number of people on the field watching the sidelines as well, trying to get Luke in, having all your flip charts and depth charts and sponsored reads. And I've come up with something on the Tiger Cats defense, but if the Tiger Cats are on the offense, I don't want to give that to you right away. So sometimes I've got a little pile and I'm trying to decide the right time to slide it over, right? So there is a method to the madness a little bit when it comes to when's the right time to hand it over.
Yeah. And a lot of times if a quarterback's on a streak, as soon as he makes a completion, you'll that's his 8th straight completion or something like that, which would be difficult for me to keep track of as the game's moving along. Let's talk about a couple other things with the Tiger Cats. Jovan Santos Knox, he's having a really good season, double digits tackles against the Argos. He just seems to be in the right place at the right time. He's making his tackles, not missing them. And I think he probably, maybe not for Ticats fans, but around the league, isn't getting the cred he deserves for the season he's having. He's tied for the league lead in tackles. Does he have a chance at doing something special as far as a record for the league or the Ticats this season?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, 72 this season equals the total he had last year. I mean, obviously a different year as far as the calendar is concerned, but he had 82 4 years ago with Winnipeg. So the way he's been playing, he's going to surpass that, no problem. I looked it up the other day. First Ticat with 10 in a game since Tunde Adeleke in the East Semi last year against Montreal. So don't tell Simone this, but to do 10 in a game is a pretty hard thing to do, right? Not a lot of guys can do it, but I think back to when I was doing stats on a regular basis and these Ticat players, but I think there was like a 4-year stretch where Zeke Marino and Jamal Johnson, 2 Ticats led the CFL in tackles for a 4-year stretch there. So he's definitely in that neighborhood in conversation as far as how good these guys have been lately.
Jamal Johnson, I got to know him a bit over Grey Cup. He's doing Hallmark movies now. Good for him.
I wouldn't know.
Busted.
Do not,
you got me.
Do not watch.
It's been a bit of a concern, the running game for Ticats fans, but really, when you look at the running game in Ticats games, it's really an irrelevant statistic. Ticats haven't rushed for a lot, but the opposition hasn't either. It would be nice to see the Tiger Cats put up some more yards. Sean Thomas Erlington had a couple of bursts, and Don Jackson has it in him. And I've gotten to know Don a little bit, and he plays hard. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's waiting for one of those big games and working hard to make it happen. But rushing, this has to be one of their least effective years, doesn't it, Jeff?
I would think so, yeah. And you said, it kind of goes both ways, that they don't allow on the rush. I don't think that's something that they want to break even on and say, okay, we're good with that aspect of the game, right? So I looked with Jackson. So he's the Ticats leading rusher, but he's 12th in the CFL. So to me, right away, that means there's 3 teams in the CFL that have 2 guys that are 1-2 on their team ahead of where the Ticats leading player is. So that's a bit of a
great point.
That's a bit of a concern to me. I also look to see who has the most rushing yards by a Ticat in a game this year. And no offense to him, but unfortunately it's Jamie Newman.
Wow.
And he
so it's not Don Jackson.
No, he had 55 rushing yards in week 10 against Toronto, and 30 of those came on one play. So, we've talked a lot about it, that, especially with average gain on first down is so big in the CFL that if you're running to be in 2nd and 8, to be in 2nd and 7 all the time with a 3-yard average is not where you want to be. So, I mean, they've really struggled. It's been 18 games since Don Jackson had a 100-yard game last year against Edmonton. So I don't even think the Ticats are looking for a 100-yard game right now, but I think they'd like to have some balance and, have 75, 80 yards on a consistent basis. I think they've had 100 yards 4 times this year. But it seems to be and not that it's a bad thing, but it's been a group effort, not just one guy carrying the load.
So true. And the defense has allowed one 100-yard rushing game against. So they've been pretty consistent. Yeah, just all football fans know that. You don't want to be one-dimensional on offense, and just to have that, keeping the defense honest with a running game and the passing game being effective is going to be a huge key. The other thing, we're at the point of the season now, Jeff, where the schedules. Tiger Cats have 6 games remaining. I mentioned earlier, Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa all have a game in hand on the Tiger Cats. They all play this week while the Ticats are off on a bye, so that will even up the games in hand. Toronto doesn't have a home game until October, which I would say would be a disadvantage, but it is odd that more road teams have won than home teams in the CFL this season.
Yeah, I don't, and especially with all the cross-country travel, I find that very hard to believe. And, we talked earlier about those 2 games that Hamilton has against Ottawa, and the game coming up against Calgary and Winnipeg and Montreal. I would think that it's hard to win on the road in the Canadian Football League, especially when there's a lot of, Edmonton, Calgary, and, Toronto, Hamilton. There's rivalries there. It's hard to go in the other person's back door when you're a 3-hour drive and come out with a W. But Toronto did it pretty handily on Monday. So good for them for getting out of there with a win.
We've got an audience question for you, Jeff. We're with Jeff Girodat, the statistician for the Ticats Audio Network and television producer for sports. It's from Jamie. You maybe know her. You were at her wedding. She's my wife. You and I both love crunching numbers. We've mentioned that a few times, but she doesn't love math. So she said, well, Jeff must love math because I love math. Do you love math?
Here's one for you. I don't know if I ever told you this, but 15 years, I probably even a couple more than 15, 17 years, I did stats on CFL broadcasts, Olympics, golf, tennis, basketball, hockey, football, and I failed grade 10 math.
Uh-oh.
I had to go to summer school for grade 10 math. So if you fail grade 10 math, you can still get a good career as a Hockey Night in Canada statistician for 15 years.
That's right. That's the motivational speech of the day.
There you go. But no, was never good at math, but I was always the guy that flipped the card around to see how many 50-goal seasons he had. And, someone asked me one time saying, well, you must be really good when it comes to knowing, who got drafted 4th overall in 1998. And I said, I don't remember that stuff, but where I really try and excel is I don't memorize that stuff, but give me 20 seconds and I'm going to find the right spot to find that information and make sure it's correct. So that to me is, if you can find the information and if you can get it quickly, that's way more important than trying to memorize something.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, I've said to you stuff in game. Hey, what about this statistic? And I know the look on your face. You don't even say anything to me. You just go straight to the laptop, and probably within 5 minutes.
The longest field goal in Ticat history.
Yes.
Right. And I started searching through, and I was like, I didn't know it was, what was it, 59 or something like that? But
58 yards. Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't know it was 58, but I knew where to look to see if it was 58. Right. And it's a weird thing for stats people that's how their brain works, right? As soon as like something long happens, you go, oh, I wonder if that's the longest. Or, when you see a 450 yard, you're like, oh, how many times has he done that before, right? It's a weird wire for your brain, for mine and everyone else's that does this position.
Yeah. Well, and I know you teach as well. You teach some classes on this.
I did, and it's a real eye opener for the students when they see it, because they see all the graphics pop up on the screen, or they see people spew them out, and they're like, this must be easy, right? And then you give them a project. You give them a project to do, and my project was always, I would give them a set of game notes and saying, come up with 5 to 7 graphics that you would use on a broadcast, and 5 notes that you would hand to a commentator. And like you say, a lot of the notes were the 2-click kind, right? That it was, well, he's got 2 goals in his last 9 games, so I'll just pass on that, right? But you can always go one step further with everything. That's my rule.
Yes. And I did know where to look for this stat. I went back. I had to check how long we've known each other. 2012.
Yeah.
10 years feels like longer. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It was in Fredericton, New Brunswick. It was, I believe, your first producing. It was the University Cup at the time, the U Sports Hockey Championship. And that was a great event, always fun to do. And I knew right from that very first probably 5 minutes of the game that you were going to have a great career as a producer, and I certainly
I didn't.
Well, trust me,
you're in the headlights.
I've worked with a lot of producers. Pretty quick if somebody's got it or they don't.
We were on a good stretch there to start, because every national championship we did seem to go to overtime for the final game. So we had about 3 or 4 in a row. I'm like, well, this is kind of fun.
Yeah, and you know me, I love drama. So if it's when I'm calling a game, if it's exciting, I'm right into it. It's the best. Well, I appreciate you taking some time, Jeff, to join me on Ticats Today. That was a great chat.
Yeah, good. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to next Saturday in the booth again.
Yes, yeah. Jeff Girodat, statistician for Ticats Audio Network, and it is Saturday against Winnipeg, home game, Tim Hortons Field. Got to pack the stadium again and show your love for the Tiger Cats. They're going to be pressing this bye week to figure things out in the final 6 games, get themselves in a playoff position, or at least they're going to certainly try to do that. We'll have a full slate of podcasts on the Ticats Audio Network starting on Monday with CFL This Week, the Coach O Show with, of course, Orlando Steinauer and Luke Tasker. Ticats This Week with myself and Luke will be on Friday, so a week from today. Ticats Today, Louie Butko should be back from his holidays all rested. And, of course, Ticats Game Day, it's a must-listen with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly. The morning before the game, they'll break everything down with the depth charts. So certainly enjoyed filling in for Louie Butko this week on Ticats Today, and definitely enjoyed that you had some time to take out of your day to listen. Hope you enjoyed it too.
Ticats Today can be heard every weekday, and we would like to hear from you. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Have a question or an opinion? We want to hear it. That's gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.